I am the personal assistant of a presidential candidate, once his shadow. Now I choose the light. You were never supposed to love me, and I was never supposed to stay. That was what I whispered to him the night before he announced his candidacy for President of the United States. It was raining in D.C. the night Daniel Calderon offered me the job. I remember because I was soaked to the bone, sitting on the marble steps of the Lincoln Memorial, wondering if I had the courage to disappear forever. He called out of nowhere, said he needed someone who could keep secrets, stay invisible, and know him better than anyone else. I need you, Milo, he said. Like the past 5 years hadn't carved a canyon between us. I should have said no. But I said, when do I start? Daniel was America's golden boy, Latino, Harvard Law, military veteran, and as charismatic as he was disciplined. But he had one flaw. Me. I was the mistake he made in college. The one-night stand that turned into years of glances, silences, then something we never had the language to name. He chose ambition over truth, and I chose survival over love. We shattered quietly, and now I was back, tailoring his suits, shielding his affairs, memorizing his lies, including the one he told himself, that he didn't still want me. I lived in his orbit again. Late nights drafting speeches that never mentioned who he really was. Early mornings correcting the press kits, editing out anything that might hint at softness. Be the hammer, Milo, he'd say. I can't afford to be seen as weak. I smiled. I buried him under 10,000 versions of himself. Every single one straight. But sometimes, in the dark, when no one else was watching, he'd reach for me. Like that night in Ohio. He was exhausted, shirt unbuttoned, tie hanging loose like a noose. Do you ever miss it? He asked, eyes glassy from the whiskey. When it was just us? I turned away. It was never just us. He stepped forward. Don't do that. Don't rewrite it. I'm not rewriting it. I'm remembering it honestly. His hands trembled when they touched mine. Not from fear, from restraint. He kissed me like a secret, like a sin, like he knew he'd never get to do it again. And maybe he wouldn't, because 3 hours later, I watched him propose to a woman on stage. Smiling, perfect, electable. I nearly quit the next morning. But something held me there. Maybe it was selfish. Maybe I wanted to watch him burn for once, not because I hated him, but because I still loved him. I wanted him to finally feel what I'd lived with since we were 20. To want something so badly it ruins you. The campaign trail got uglier. A rival senator leaked a blurry photo of Daniel and me from college. We were shirtless, sitting too close, laughing too hard. Not damning, but suggestive enough to cause a PR crisis. He didn't sleep for 48 hours. You think I should lie? He asked me, eyes bloodshot, voice cracking. You think you haven't already? He slammed his fists on the table. This isn't just about me, Milo. It's about immigrants, veterans, working-class families. If I lose, they lose. And if you win pretending to be someone you're not, they still lose. Silence stretched between us like a wound. That was the night I stopped writing speeches. Instead, I wrote the truth. I drafted a letter one Daniel would read at the final debate, if he had the guts. In it, he admitted to loving a man. Not as scandal, but as reality. He spoke about the fear of being erased by ambition, of burying parts of himself to be palatable to America. He said, I can't lead this country with integrity if I don't first love myself with it. And at the end, he said my name. Milo. Just that. One word. Enough. I didn't think he'd read it. But he did. He read it live on stage with millions watching. And the world held its breath. I was sitting backstage, heart pounding so violently it drowned out the applause. Then came the silence. Not boos. Not cheers. Just silence, the terrifying kind that meant everything was about to change. He walked off stage, straight to me. Do you regret it? I asked. No, he said. But I do regret not doing it sooner. He took my hand. The cameras were still rolling. He kissed me. Not like a secret. Not like a sin. But like a man finally choosing the light. The world didn't explode the way we feared. Yes, the headlines were brutal for 72 hours straight. Every network ran it on a loop, Calderon comes out. Gay kiss shocks nation? Campaign suicide or brave stand? They analyzed every breath he took, every flicker in his eyes, every twitch of my fingers as I reached for his hand. We were no longer people. We were symbols, weapons, scandals. But something unexpected happened. People didn't run. They leaned in. A mother from Kansas posted a video, tears streaking down her cheeks. My son told me he's gay tonight because he saw Daniel Calderon say it on national television. Thank you for giving him that courage. A retired veteran wrote an op-ed. I served with Calderon. He's still the same man. He just stopped lying about who he loves. Isn't that what we ask of our leaders' honesty? Even the campaign staff, some stunned. Some moved, didn't leave. Not a single one. But the hardest part wasn't the media. It was his family. His father didn't speak to him for weeks. You embarrassed the Calderon name, he said over voicemail. We built everything on the American dream, and you throw it away for this. Phase? Daniel stared at that message for a long time, then deleted it. I won't apologize for who I am, he whispered. Not anymore. He didn't cry in front of the staff or the cameras. But that night, in the hotel room, he curled into me and shook so hard I thought he might break. I thought he'd be proud, he said. I held him. He will be. Maybe not today, but he will. For once, he didn't argue. 3 weeks later, the polls surprised everyone. Instead of plummeting, Daniel's numbers soared. Not just among young voters or progressive cities, but in unexpected places. Rust Belt towns, Texas suburbs, places where people were tired of curated candidates who played characters instead of being human. He wasn't perfect. He still overthought every sentence, still checked the mirror 6 times before every interview. But something had changed in him. He spoke freer, smiled wider. He let me stand beside him. No more pretending I was just the assistant. No more disappearing before photographers arrived. No more back doors, hushed exits, or separate hotel rooms. He even told the team to stop managing my presence. If the world can't handle that I'm in love, he said at a press event, then maybe I'm not the right person to lead it. But most people could handle it. The backlash never fully disappeared, of course. There were always protesters outside his events holding signs like, God hates sinners, and family values matter. But Daniel never shouted back. He never engaged. He just looked at me afterward and said, they're loud, but love is louder. And then he'd squeeze my hand like he was reminding himself it was real, that I was. The night before the election, he stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial again, the same place where he'd first called me back into his life. We were alone, bundled in coats, the Washington air crisp and still. He looked older now, not tired, wiser, like a man who had finally stopped carrying the weight of who he was supposed to be and just existed. Do you remember when I offered you the job? He asked, smiling. I nodded. You said you needed someone who could keep secrets. He laughed. You were better at keeping mine than I was. We stood there quietly, the reflecting pool shimmering like a mirror beneath the moon. Then he turned to me, eyes soft. I don't want to keep secrets anymore, Milo. I looked at him. You won't have to. He reached into his pocket. I blinked. You're not. No speeches, he cut in. I've given enough. He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a silver ring. Simple. Honest. I don't know if I'll win tomorrow, but I do know this. I want to go to sleep every night and wake up every morning next to the man who's seen every part of me and stayed. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up, heart pounding like it was trying to burst out of me. So I just nodded, and he slipped the ring onto my finger. He didn't win the presidency. He came closer than anyone predicted. And when the results were announced, he stood in front of the country and gave the most graceful concession speech I'd ever seen. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He thanked his supporters, congratulated his opponent, and said, this campaign was never about a title. It was about truth, about showing that love and leadership can coexist. And I'll keep fighting for that, from anywhere, with the man I love beside me. And that was how Daniel Calderon walked off the stage. Not as a loser, but as a man finally fully free. We left DC a week later. Rented a cabin in Oregon, far from headlines and handshakes. We cooked badly, hiked too far, laughed until our ribs hurt. We healed. And every morning he woke before me, traced his fingers along my spine, and whispered, "I choose you," again and again. Some days we talked about politics. Other days we just watched the trees sway in silence. We didn't need to prove anything anymore. We'd already won. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.